You've invested a lot in this relationship. These 3 techniques can improve your marriage almost immediately, whether or not your spouse is on board. Does that sound valuable to you? I'm a professional psychologist, and I remember early in my career I attended a seminar with Dr. John Gottman. You can go look him up. He's really well known in the relationships area. And I attended this conference and was taking notes the whole time, and I remember it was early in my career, and so it was a little bit of a stretch to get there, you know, both in terms of cost and time away from the office and everything else. And I came home and explained what I had just learned to my wife, Vicki. And she summarized it beautifully. She said this, "Oh, okay, so you learned to do more of what works and less of what doesn't. Is that what you just learned in 3 days?" And she was joking with me a little bit. But she actually nailed it too. This is what it comes down to in marriage. We do more of what works and less of what doesn't. Now, close to 30 years later, I have learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. So let's get to that first technique. I was in a training just last week with John Bates. He is a phenomenal speaker, coach, and thought leader who shared an idea with me that got me thinking about another approach that we can use to improve our marriage all on our own. And it has to do with a monkey. A negative monkey. Can you just picture a monkey for a minute that gets into your head and starts playing around in there and has a lot of chatter going on? So, do you hear the voices in your mind? Some people get really nervous when a psychologist asks them about the voices in their head. Don't worry about it. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. And even some people are like, "What voices? I don't have any voices." That's the voice I mean. The one that's in there commenting about everything. We can think of this as the negative monkey. Now notice when you try to do something positive, that negative monkey in your head starts running around and causing havoc. And it starts talking to you about you and about your spouse. So here's technique number 1. Put the negative monkey on loudspeaker. Wait, this is a strange technique, right? What we're doing is isolating the monkey, because we've got some other techniques, okay, some other steps after this. We don't often even see it as the monkey. We think it's our own thoughts. So here's an example. My negative monkey, as I'm interacting with my sweetheart Vicki, might tell me, "Oh, she's really gonna be upset about this," or "She's probably not gonna like this." "Oh, Vicki thinks you're being silly again." This is what my monkey is telling me. And your monkey is going to tell you things about yourself. Who do you think you are? People are going to see right through you at some point. They'll know that you're a fraud. You're trying to deceive them. This is the negative monkey. Now, the point that I want to make here is something that John Bates shared with me. He said, the monkey isn't you. Well, that's interesting. What if that voice in there commenting and running around and causing chaos isn't you? Well, then who are you? I remember when I was reading Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now. Powerful book, by the way, but he shared a time in his life when he was suicidally depressed. He was actually making plans to end his own life when he heard the voice. And the voice said, "I hate myself." And then he heard another voice that saved his life. And the other voice was, "Wait a minute. Who is this I that hates me so much? And who is this me that I hate?" It blew his mind and it saved his life. And what he realized is exactly what I'm sharing with you right now. The monkey is not you. You are the one who is listening. You are the silent observer of the monkey voice. You're hearing it, but it's not you. Let's just play with that for a minute. Picture it as the monkey and put it on loudspeaker, meaning give it voice, like I just did. Now, you're not going to say these things to your spouse. It's usually not helpful to say what the negative monkey is telling you openly to your spouse. This is for you, okay? Get in a place where you can give voice to it and just acknowledge, what is the negative monkey saying that my spouse is thinking or saying, which, by the way, you don't know. You never know what your spouse is thinking, even if they tell you. So notice that. But what is the negative monkey telling you about what they're thinking? And what is the negative monkey saying about you? I gave you an example just a minute ago. So do that for yourself. That's technique number 1. Put the negative monkey on loudspeaker so that we can isolate it. Because then we're going to technique number 2. This is a physical one, so do it with me, okay? You're going to grab that monkey, grab it hard, right around the shoulders, okay? And yank it out of the driver's seat. Your monkey's been in the driver's seat. We're going to yank it out of the driver's seat, but we're not done yet with technique number 2. We're going to turn around, we're going to put it in the back seat and buckle it in because it doesn't want to go. Do you hear it protesting? This little monkey voice that you keep hearing, we're taking it out of the driver's seat, put it in the back seat. Are you doing this with me? Do it physically. Reach out, grab that monkey, rip it out of the driver's seat, put it in the back seat, and buckle it in. Now, technique number 3. You step into that driver's seat. Okay, get your hands squarely on the wheel because you're going to drive this now. You're going to hear some chatter from the back seat. All right, and anytime you try to think differently, you're going to hear the chatter of that monkey that you just buckled into the back seat. Do not let it out. Do not let it come back up and take the wheel again. You stay in the driver's seat because now that you're in the driver's seat, you are going to create a new story. You're going to create a new story about what your spouse is thinking and feeling, and you're going to create a new story about you. This is where you get to describe yourself and your spouse without the monkey's input. So what might that look like? I shared with you some of the monkey chatter that might have happened in my mind with my sweetheart, Vicky. Well, what would be a new story that would serve me and her better? I chose her. I love her. She chose me. She loves me. Assume the best always, and you're in a better position. Even if you're wrong, assume the best. Assume positive intent. Here's an important point to remember as you create your new story, because you're in the driver's seat now. The enemy is not you or your spouse. It's the monkey. That pesky monkey that you buckled into the back seat is the problem. It's not you. It's not your spouse. The monkey's going to try to convince you that, hey, this is all your spouse's fault, or this is all your fault. We're not interested in whose fault it is. And that's why we buckled the monkey in the back seat. That's the enemy. We quiet the monkey enough that we can insert a new story. We are both on the same team. We are completely aligned. This is powerful. It changes the energy with which you're going to show up in this relationship. Now, I've got a special invitation for you before I share the third and final technique for this video. And that invitation is, who have you already talked to about this relationship, about what you're trying to accomplish? I know you've talked to someone. Who is it? Your sister? Is it a friend? Is it a therapist or a coach or a counselor? Think of that person. Share this video with that person. Will you do that? I've got one more powerful technique for you, and this is very strategic and tactical, and it's something that I have seen to work time and time again over 3 decades of clinical practice. And here's what it is. Memorize, commit to memory, the 9 principles that are guaranteed to save your marriage. I'll give you the principles here in just a minute, but here's where I'm coming from. I remember a time several years ago when the kids were still little, and I had borrowed a truck and a trailer to take the kids on a little family vacation to Wyoming. We were out in the middle of Wyoming. We're going to see a working cattle ranch, but we had a little problem. There was a blowout on the trailer. One of the tires, done. Well, I got the rig over to the side of the road, and I went back and I checked out the damage, and yep, it's done. So I needed to replace the tire. There was a spare on the back of the trailer. So I go to the back of the trailer, and I notice that the spare is bolted to the back of the trailer with a little 1/2-inch nut. I did not have my tools with me. I had a lug wrench, it was in the truck, but you can't take a little 1/2-inch nut off with a lug wrench. It's the wrong size, right? I didn't have any other tools, and it was kind of tight on there. It was a little rusty. I knew I would need a tool to get this off. So I ended up calling roadside assistance. This guy drove out from Evanston in a big old tow truck because he didn't know if he'd have to haul me in. He hops out of the tow truck and hands me a 1/2-inch wrench and a bill for $100. And I didn't even get to keep the wrench. Within a few minutes, I had the spare off. I was able to replace it. We're on the road again. Now, here's what I learned. You have to have your tools on board. There will be breakdowns. Have you noticed this in your relationship? Yeah, things are going to go south sometimes, and you're going to have a breakdown on the side of the road. Well, which tools are you going to use? You have to have your tools on board. That's why I'm giving you this challenge, this technique to memorize the 9 principles that are guaranteed to save your marriage. Then your tools are on board, and no matter what you encounter, you can go to your toolbox and there it is. Is that enough of a motivation? Now let me tell you about the 9 principles. And you don't have to worry about writing these down right now. I'll give them to you. I'll send you a copy of this. Just go to the URL on the screen, drpauljenkins.com/9 principles, the number 9, the word principles. I'll put this in your inbox. What we have here are 9 principles that through a lot of clinical experience I have seen always work. But there's a warning. And go back to the beginning of this video. How can I improve my marriage all by myself? If your spouse isn't on board, that doesn't even matter at this point because these 9 principles are for you. They are for personal use only. And when you think of them that way, they become power tools. And I promise you'll find some things that you can do. So what you're going to do, memorize the 9 principles, and then any problem you come up against. Which of these 9 principles can I apply? Now I have a little warning because you're going to see 4 or 5 that your spouse could apply. And you're going to think, oh, this would be so much better if my spouse would just... And then you're going to list some of those principles. Be more respectful or more compassionate or more loving, right? And it's easy to think that because you're actually right. Things would be better if your spouse shaped up. But guess what? That's true for your spouse too. And if you will take personal responsibility for this, I guarantee you're going to find at least 1 or 5 or 7 of these 9 principles that you could use some work on. Do you want to know what they are? Positivity, values, humility, forgiveness, respect, love, compassion, work, and wholesome recreational activities. They're on the list. Find the one that you need to work on, and I guarantee it's going to improve your marriage whether or not your spouse is on board.